Welcome to the Steps Podcast, a space to enjoy empowering conversations on spiritual growth and healing. These conversations are based on the Steps course, a 12-step program designed to bring freedom from negative thought patterns and behaviors, equipping participants with tools to live a more joyful and hope-filled life. In this series, Lou chats individually with a few participants to hear their stories of journeying towards freedom. We hope you enjoy this episode.
In this episode, I chat with Mette all about her fear of conflict. We talk about why the phrase, "I don't mind," can be a dangerous one at times, and also how community can help us in our own process grow in self-awareness. I hope you enjoy the episode. Mette, it's really good to chat to you today. Tell us a bit about who are you, what do you do, where do you live?
I'm Mette. I am living in Denmark and north of Copenhagen. I am married to Lars and I have 3 children and I have 4 grandchildren. I'm a nurse by background, but currently I'm working as research fellow and specifically around psychological and social issues of being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Wow, that is incredible. And I'm really happy that we're chatting to you because Lars is a regular feature of this podcast. And I'm glad we get to chat to you, his lovely wife, but also you have such an interesting story yourself and you've been so integral in all of Steps, from kind of co-founding it to sharing your journey and encouraging people along the way. So I'm delighted to chat with you. Tell us what you've been working on most recently in Steps.
So on my last Steps course, I worked on my fear of conflict.
Is that something, because I know you've done Steps for a long time, is that something that you've been working on for a while or is this brand new? How did it come about, you deciding to work on this?
So I did work on my fear of conflict many years ago because it is something that I have been aware of. It's probably maybe 7 years ago I worked on it. And that gave me some insights where I discovered that I was fearing conflict with those I am closer to, but I was happy to engage in conflict with people I didn't know, probably too much. So that was an insight that I hopefully learned from. But then since that, I have been working on low self-worth and lack of self-consideration. And in working with those issues, it became evident that in the day-to-day, that a way that shows up is that I am afraid of conflict. So I withdraw and it's difficult for me to voice my opinion or to let people know what I really want. And I can also be in doubt myself, what my wishes and wants are. And I really want to, I don't want to create a conflict that could give me this sense of disconnection. So I want to keep the peace, and a way to do that is to not engage in conflict.
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is, in terms of how it comes out in your behaviors, you withdraw, you don't necessarily connect with or express what your personal desire or wish is in a situation. So is it that you stay quiet?
Yes, I can stay quiet, or I can sort of just go along with what is being suggested. Yeah.
Oh, I identify with this a lot. Maybe I'll work on this next time. But I also think this is something that is a very common thing that I have personally experienced, but also that I see in other people as well, because conflict can be quite scary, and depending on how you were brought up and what it looked like to resolve or deal with conflict in your family, think that can really run through and kind of continue as an adult. So I think it's one of those things that is very common, isn't it? And I know it, for me, it can come out as being passive aggressive rather than actually kind of expressing myself because I'm fearing the rejection.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. Yes.
And so what was it like working on it? How are things now?
It's been, well, my experience of working through steps, and I've been working through steps a lot of times in different areas. And the way it works is that it really helps me to reflect on both my thoughts around the behavior, but also realizing what is going on. Because I might have a sense of what is going on, but going through the reflections and very much also listening to other people in the group is helping me to make it more concrete and to show how it affects my everyday life. And one of the participants in my last group, she was sharing just before coming up to a holiday, she was saying, and she was working on low self-worth, and she was saying, I have decided not to just go along with what my family wants on the holiday. I want to find out what I want, and I want to say it aloud. And that was such a good way of expressing what is going on. So I took that and really tried to think about that, because I think it's been so much part of the way I'm just reacting that a lot of times I don't notice it. I just say, oh, sure, we can do this, or yeah, I don't care, or yeah. So I listened to a very interesting podcast with a team of people called Lou, Jamie, and Lars. And someone says, yeah, I have decided not to say, and I can't remember the English word, but something like, yeah, sure. What was the word you used?
Ember. I actually can't remember what it was.
But you were saying,
I think it was, I don't mind. I've decided.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah. So, and that's a good way of reminding myself, if this is what I say, okay, this is where I need to stop.
Yes.
Say, do I really mind? Or am I just saying I don't mind to stop or to avoid the conflict? And the reason why I want to avoid the conflict is to not put myself in a situation where I can feel rejected. So it's some of that is also being revealed through the process, that the defense mechanisms or the actions, and it could be my fear of conflict. It's really to help myself rather than taking care of others, in a sense. It's to avoid putting me in a situation where I fear the rejection or I feel bad about a situation. And that's something I really need to practice, and being okay with disagreement, because to me, disagreement or not being aligned has been dangerous. I felt, oh, there's something wrong with me. But actually realizing, no, it's completely okay to have different opinions, and we can still go along, or we can still, both in a work situation, but also in a family situation. It's okay. And then we have to figure out or come to a compromise of, this is what you want, this is what I want. Maybe we'll do something completely different.
Kind of brave, isn't it? Because growth like this is like, it does feel a bit like uncomfortable, doesn't it? Like doing this for the first time, and even this week I had something where I pushed back on something I wouldn't normally push back on, and they agreed to do what I'd suggested. But even afterwards, even though I kind of had expressed myself, I was like, oh, this feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It sounds like what Steps has done has grown your awareness of what the issue is and where it comes out. And even being in a group context where other people are sharing theirs. So like the lady about going on holiday and saying, like just being more expressive about her desires, that then made you realize that that's something you want to do as well. And it just shows, doesn't it, how community is so important in helping us grow in awareness of what we're going through.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a sense of like, oh, they're growing and they're pushing themselves in a really good way, so I want to do it too. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah, and I've also experienced a number of times people in the group saying things that really revealed to me this is what is going on in my life as well, without me being aware of it or being able to express it.
Yeah. So when they give voice to something, it activates something in you or me when I'm in it, and it's like, oh yeah, that's true for me too. Or I knew this, but I couldn't articulate it, and someone else has just articulated it in a really helpful way.
Yeah, exactly. And also, when sharing reflections in the group, it's even, I usually write my reflections down and read them in the group, but then usually something adds to it from what has been said in the group that makes me reflect even more, and often to a deeper level, and being more concrete, because sometimes the reflections can be very sort of high level in a sense, but being able to share and really looking at, well, how does this affect my everyday life? And where is it I can, change the things I can? And where is it that I need to accept things that I can't change?
Yeah. I often find when I'm doing reflections for the step, I kind of feel like I only know what I know, and I write down to the extent that I can, the extent of kind of mental headspace that I have that day and awareness I have about it. And I agree, I've had times when other people have been reflecting and I've had this, oh, me too moment. And I think in life, sometimes we don't always have context where we can get that me too moment where, oh yeah, I'm really struggling with this too, because, we can be in work mode, or even we can be with our friends and having chit chat. But if we're not going deeper and really talking about these things, then these things just don't get addressed, do they?
True.
Yeah, the power of community.
Yeah, and the power of the group where we don't actually make any comments to each other. So I can be in the group and feel safe in sharing, because no one is going to, give me some advice or question whether my perspective is correct. And so it's listening to my own reflections as well that makes it sometimes less serious, because I can have done some reflections at home and was like, oh no, and then when I voice it, it's like, oh, it's either more serious or, oh, it's just like that, So that's
it. Gives you more perspective when you've done it.
Yeah,
because I do actually. You saying that, I'm like, sometimes I do get in my own head a bit, and I will think, oh, this is disaster, and then just voicing it, knowing that you're not going to get someone responding to you, takes the intensity out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I've also quite a few times I've worked on the same issue more than once, and then I have used the reflections from last time to see where I have grown so I could raise the flag, as we say, but also to sort of continue the reflection, because if I work on the same thing, I start from a different place. So even though it's the same area that I'm working on, it unfolds in a different way and connects to the other things that I have been working on. So it's very much, I very much use steps as a way to continue to grow and to continue to be in a relationship with God, who I think is my higher power, but also to be mindful of my relationship to myself and to others. And it's, I'm finding it really helpful to do that.
If you look at where you were right at the beginning, when you very first started the steps process to now, obviously you've done it for years.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say is the long-term difference that it has made being in this process?
I think the long-term difference is really that I am allowing myself to be in a process. I think that is the main thing that I keep coming back to, that it's not about going from being really horrible in some context. So at the beginning, when I started steps, I had this sense that I'm the worst mother in the whole world. And it was, when I say it's like, oh, you're really exaggerating, and but that's a feeling I had, and I wanted to become the best mother in the whole universe by going through steps. And I realized that no, it's not about being the worst or being the best, but it's about being in that process and allowing myself to learn gradually and to get those feedback, in the group, from the reflections, from my relationship with God. And that has been the biggest change in my life. And I would say, well, often I think if I hadn't done steps, there are so many things that I have done that I wouldn't have had the courage to do. And I think I would, of course I don't know, but I think I would not thrive in the way that I do now.
Well, it also sounds like your metrics have changed. So rather than judging yourself as either the worst mother or the best mother, it's more like you've recognized that either of those aren't helpful. Yeah. And actually what's more important is your own growth and kind of the in-between of what's happening, which I really resonate with that.
And I think also by really acknowledging how much I need to work on things, or it sounds like it's all my work. That's not what I mean. But I need to be in a process where I need help from others. I need help from God, and I need to be willing to make it change myself. But that also gives me this understanding that other people are also in a process, and they also need to work on things. So I think it has changed my perception in the sense that being a bit more, I guess, acknowledging that, I'm just a human being, you're just a human being, and we're in this process together. We don't always get it right, but as long as we're trying, that's the main thing.
And just lastly, you talked about if you hadn't done steps, there were things that you wouldn't have had the courage to do that you have done now. Can you give any examples of what those things, or a couple of those things, might have been, where you can recognize that you've really stepped out in a new way?
Yeah. So one concrete example is applying for my PhD fellowship in the UK 10 years ago, I would never have had the courage to even apply. I didn't think I would get it. But just getting to the point where I was actually courageous enough to think about getting a new job and then applying for something that was, completely out of my comfort zone. That was the first way of showing courage to myself, and then actually accepting it when I was offered the position. I don't think I would have even considered that. And I think for us as a couple, that would have been, very different if I hadn't done steps and Lars hadn't done steps.
What is amazing about that is obviously you being in this process has given you the courage to do that. But through you doing that, the impact you have made, both in your work, obviously studying for the PhD, all the therapeutic work you do, all the research you do, and then, you've been active part of a church, you've been really developing Steps ministry, and so much of that is born out of that decision for you to be courageous, which has come from you being in this kind of process. And that, to me, I'm just like, this process just not only changes you or has changed you, but it has changed countless other people because of being in it. And I know that sometimes there can be this concern, maybe more from the outside, that, if you do this process, is it kind of navel gazing? Is it very introspective and you're constantly going around your own issues? But what's really struck me is that it enabled you to be healthier, which has then had such an impact on not only you, but other people, which is incredible.
It is incredible. And just if I can comment on that is something people say, well, is it just navel gazing? And, you're just focusing on yourself. But actually, by giving that time or allowing that space to be in a process myself, that has a huge influence on how I go about my life in the world, which has, I think, a benefit. So while it is a process of reflecting on my own thoughts and behaviors, it has an impact on something else as well.
Absolutely does. Wow, thank you so much for chatting to me. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. Do you have a word of encouragement for anyone listening?
I would say if you're considering doing steps, try it. And if you have done steps and maybe you feel like, it was changed a little bit, but not enough, try to do it again. And if you've done it loads of times, just keep on doing it, because there's no limit to how much it can give you.
I would wholeheartedly agree. Thank you so much, Mette.
Thank you, Lou.
What I loved about this episode was how honest Mette was about the things that she has been growing in over the years of doing steps, about how she's changed from her goal of steps being to be the best mother to actually the goal of steps being growth, and how actually the steps process has meant that she has stepped out in new things she never would have agreed to before. And that is amazing. I am so encouraged, and I hope that you are encouraged to continue your steps journey.
The Steps podcast is brought to you by Steps Global, a non-profit charity that is funded by a group of Steps supporters. These are people who have experienced personal transformation through the steps and who want to share these tools more broadly so that anyone can find freedom from unhelpful thought and behavior patterns. To join us or share a one-time gift, visit www.stepscourse.org/support. If you are interested in finding out more about the Steps course, including upcoming courses, sign up to our mailing list via our website. Thanks for listening.